Imagine an album so raw, wild, and ahead of its time that radio stations and major soul labels turned their backs. Decades later, crate diggers call it the ultimate hidden soul masterpiece of 1971. Swamp Dogg's Total Destruction to Your Mind was a one-man protest. Self-produced by Jerry Williams Jr., who ditched his old name and the Motown sound, tore open studio doors in Muscle Shoals, and built a psychedelic, satirical soul record that tackled racism and war head-on. But why did this fearless reinvention, blending Southern funk, LSD-inspired chaos, and razor-sharp lyrics, fall into obscurity while copycat stars soared? And how did this lost oddity become a cult classic prized by collectors today? The answer starts with a man and a name nobody in 1971 could imagine. Swamp Dogg didn't just write the songs, he ran the whole show. In February and March of 1970, Jerry Williams Jr. planted himself behind the console at Capricorn Studios in Macon, Georgia, refusing to let anyone else call the shots. The Capricorn engineers, fresh off sessions with Southern rockers and soul legends, found themselves swept into late-night experiments that blurred the line between genius and madness. Jim "Fantastic" Hawkins, the chief engineer, kept the tape rolling as the hours stretched past midnight, capturing moments that felt as unpredictable as they were electric. The studio itself buzzed with a kind of freedom that was rare in those days. Capricorn's brick walls had soaked up plenty of Southern soul and blues, but Swamp Dogg brought a different energy, one that pulsed with psychedelic ideas and a stubborn refusal to play it safe. He would call for another take at 3 a.m, chasing a sound only he could hear. Sometimes he would sit at the piano, sometimes he would pace the room, tossing out wild ideas to the musicians. LSD had a seat at the table too, fueling the kind of creative chaos that left even seasoned session players shaking their heads. Muscle Shoals regulars drifted through the sessions. Jesse Beaver Carr's guitar licks, Paul Barry Hornsby's swirling organ, and Johnny Duck Sandlin's tight drums all became weapons in Swamp Dogg's arsenal. The Maconites' horn section punched through the haze with blasts that could wake the dead. Backing vocals from the Jackie Avery singers added gospel grit, grounding the madness in deep soul tradition. Each player brought their own flavor, but it was Swamp Dogg's vision that tied it all together. He wanted every track to feel like it might fall apart at any second, then snap back with a groove that would not quit. The result was a record that sounded nothing like what soul radio expected in 1971. Every technical choice, the echo on the vocals, the jagged guitar, the swirling keys, served the album's wild, untamed heart. In that studio, with the clock ticking toward dawn, Swamp Dogg found the freedom to tear up the rulebook and build something nobody could predict. Canyon Records was never built to carry a record like this across the finish line. In 1970, the label's shoestring budget meant only a handful of pressings made it out of the plant and into the wild. While Motown and Atlantic could flood the market with glossy soul singles, Canyon's reach barely stretched past a few southern states. Trade papers from the era barely gave the album a mention. No major ad campaigns, no coast-to-coast radio blitz, just a few scattered promos and hope that word of mouth might catch fire. But the real wall came from radio itself. Program directors, already wary of anything too raw or political, took one look at Swamp Dogg's name in the wild track list and quietly slid the record to the bottom of the pile. The title track's fever dream funk and references to LSD and the pointed jabs at racism and war were not the kind of messages that fit the safe, polished playlists of 1971. Anecdotes from the time describe DJS passing on the album, worried about backlash from sponsors or station owners. No Billboard airplay, No charting singles except for a minor blip with Mama's Baby, Daddy's Maybe, and that was more a fluke than a breakthrough. Canyon's size turned every risk into a gamble. Without a national distributor, records sat in warehouses or got lost in the shuffle. Even collectors today talk about how tough it is to find an original pressing, with most copies surfacing only years later at swap meets or tucked in dusty bins. For Swamp Dogg, it must have felt like shouting into the void, his most fearless work boxed in by the limits of a label that could not get it heard. The industry's cold shoulder was not just about money or reach. It was a warning to any artist thinking about stepping outside the lines. Swamp Dogg had made a record that could not be ignored, but Canyon Records did not have the muscle to get it past the gatekeepers. That tension, artistic freedom up against the machinery of the business, set the stage for the album's disappearance from the charts, even as its legend began to grow underground. Every groove on Total Destruction to Your Mind throws out the rulebook. The album does not settle into one sound. It mutates, track by track, into something wild and unpredictable. One moment you are hit with a blast of Macon horns, sharp enough to rattle your teeth. The next, a Hammond organ swirls through the mix, melting the edges of the song into a psychedelic haze. Johnny Sandlin's drums keep the floor shaking, while Jesse Carr's guitar licks cut through like a hot knife, sometimes bluesy, sometimes jagged, always just on the edge of chaos. Swamp Dogg built these songs like a mad scientist, splicing Southern soul with the fuzzed-out energy of late 60s rock. Funk rhythms lock in tight, then break apart into something stranger, sometimes playful, sometimes raw. It is the sound of a band that could snap into a James Brown groove, then veer off into a trippy detour without warning. The horns, played by the Mechanites, do not just decorate the tracks, they punch holes in the wall of sound, firing off riffs that feel both classic and unhinged. This record feels mad in the best sense, but the real twist comes from the way Swamp Dogg layers satire on top of these grooves. Lyrical barbs cut through the music, lampooning everything from war to small-town hypocrisy, sometimes with a wink, sometimes with a snarl. Imagine Sly Stone's party energy colliding head-on with Frank Zappa's weird humor, all filtered through Deep South sweat and grit. Every track dares you to expect the unexpected. One minute you are laughing, the next you are floored by a line that stings. That is the kind of shapeshifter album this is. Emotional, chaotic, and never standing still. Word started to leak out in strange places. While Canyon Records struggled to move boxes, a handful of critics and crate diggers began whispering about a soul album that sounded like nothing else. The cover alone, a warped psychedelic portrait of Swamp Dogg, eyes bugged out, suit rumpled, half grinning, half warning, hinted at the chaos inside. It did not look like a Motown record. It looked like a dare. Music writers who stumbled across it did not hold back. The New Yorker called it a crazed, brilliant blast, putting Swamp Dogg in the same league as Sly Stone and Curtis Mayfield. Robert Christgau, never one for easy praise, labeled it in-your-face black rock. The Sunday Times dubbed Swamp Dogg the missing link between Otis Redding and Frank Zappa, a line that stuck with collectors for years. Even as the album skipped past the charts, it started to show up on want lists and in the hands of DJs who liked their records weird, wild, and a little bit dangerous. Word of mouth did what radio would not. In back rooms and late-night parties, the needle dropped and the room changed. A few early fans began trading stories about the lyrics, the jokes, the way the horns hit like a slap. On collector sites, the album's rating quietly climbed above 4 stars, a sign that the people who found it did not let it go. For those in the know, Total Destruction to Your Mind was already something special, A secret handshake, a badge for the crate digger underground. The needle drops, and the album does not waste a second. Total destruction to your mind explodes out of the gate with a blast of horns that sound like a parade gone sideways. Swamp Dogg delivers his opening lines with a sly grin, tossing out "Sittin' on a Cornflake," riding a roller coaster, riffing on the Beatles with a wink, then crashing straight into his own brand of Southern funk. The Maconites' horn section punches through the mix, blaring over a groove that feels both reckless and perfectly in control. Underneath, Johnny Sandlin's drums drive the chaos forward, while the organ swirls in and out, giving the whole track a psychedelic edge. It is a fever dream opener, barely 2 minutes, but packed with enough attitude to fill a whole side of vinyl. Then comes "Dust My Broom," twisting a blues standard into something swampy and new. The guitar, sharp and stinging, cuts across the rhythm with a slide riff that feels like it has been electrified. Jesse Carr's playing does not just nod to Muscle Shoals tradition, it drags it through the mud and sets it on fire. The horns do not just sit in the background, they jab and jab, giving the track a punch that is as much rock as it is soul. Swamp Dogg's vocals are rough and playful, tossing out lines that dance between the absurd and the dead serious. Every bar is a reminder that this is not your standard soul record. There is danger and humor lurking in every groove. But just when you think the record is all wild energy, "If You Ask Me Because I Love You" changes the temperature. The chaos drops away, replaced by a slow, heartfelt melody. Swamp Dogg lets his guard down, crooning over a bed of gentle keys and soft backing vocals from the Jackie Avery singers. The horns are still there, but now they are tender, weaving in and out of the verses like a sympathetic friend. It is a love song, pure and simple, and the vulnerability cuts through the album's earlier madness. In 3 tracks, Swamp Dogg has already spun from psychedelic satire to deep soul balladry, showing off a range that keeps you guessing what is coming next. Track 4, Whatever, does not so much sing as it rants. Swamp Dogg leans into the mic with a deadpan delivery, half preacher, half stand-up comic, and he lets loose on everything from government lies to the daily grind. The rhythm section locks into a slow, hypnotic groove, but the real action is the way he spits lines, as if airing a lifetime of grudges. There is a raw spoken word edge here. He is not afraid to sound bitter or absurd, and the band follows him into every twist and turn. Horns jab in, the organ hums underneath, and the whole thing feels like a fever dream sermon. It is satire with a pulse. It lands somewhere between a protest and a punchline. Then the album slips into Sal-A-Funky, a 3.5-minute instrumental that lets the band stretch out and show off. The lyrics drop away, and what remains is pure groove, tight drums and bass bubbling up from below, with Paul Hornsby on organs swirling like smoke. Horns riff back and forth, trading licks with the keys, while the guitar cuts sharp and clean through the middle. It is a wordless jam that feels both loose and precise, as if the whole band is breathing together. The energy is thick, the funk undeniable. This is Swamp Dogg's crew at full strength, locked in and having fun, letting the music speak where words cannot. Then comes The Mind, the last track on side A, and the band takes a deep dive into psychedelic territory. The organ lays down thick, echoing layers, swirling around Swamp Dogg's voice as he drifts between singing and speaking. The groove slows to a crawl, hypnotic and strange, with the horns and guitar melting into the background. There is a sense of drifting, like the music is slipping in and out of focus, chasing something just beyond reach. It is a mood piece, 5 minutes of controlled chaos, with every musician holding the tension between order and madness. By the time the side ends, the album has traveled from biting humor to a trance-like haze, leaving you somewhere between laughter and awe, not quite sure what just hit you. Side B wastes no time getting rowdy. Redneck barrels in with a sly, stomping groove, and Swamp Dogg's voice is pure mischief. He is not just poking fun, he is throwing dynamite at Southern stereotypes, spitting out the line, "Some of my best friends are rednecks, but I don't want to be one." The Maconites' horns shout back like judges, turning satire into a brass-fueled showdown. It is a joke with a razor edge, and the band plays it like they are in on every punchline. Then the mood flips. I Kissed Your Face slows everything down, trading jokes for aching, honest soul. Swamp Dogg drops the wisecracks and lets the heartbreak show. The Jackie Avery singers float behind him, and the organ swells like a warm blanket. Every note feels real, almost vulnerable. A reminder that even the wildest prankster can bleed. It sounds like a love song written at 3 in the morning after the party is over and the lights are low. But it is mama's baby, daddy's maybe that lands the biggest punch. This track is pure soap opera, a southern soul drama that is as funny as it is raw. Swamp Dogg lays it out plain. Mama's baby, daddy's maybe. That's what the people say. The groove stays tight, the horns stay sharp, but the story is messier than any paternity test. It was the album's only single to scrape the charts, peaking at 33 on the R&B list, a brief, unlikely brush with the mainstream. Swamp Dogg turns family secrets into a sing-along, making you laugh, even as he is twisting the knife. That is his gift, finding the truth in the absurd and making you feel every bit of it. Swamp Dogg never lets the listener off the hook. As side B winds down, The Love We Got Ain't Worth Two, Dead Flies hits with a funky, cynical punch. The bass struts, the horns sound like they are both laughing and crying, and Swamp Dogg tosses out lines about a relationship gone stale. He sings The Love We Got Ain't Worth Two Dead Flies, rolling his eyes at romance. But the groove is too tight to let the bitterness settle. The band locks in, every note snapping with attitude, turning heartbreak into something you can dance to. And then, almost as if to answer all the madness, the album closes with, "These are the things." The tempo drops and the mood turns reflective. Swamp Dogg trades satire for soul, laying out a list of life's real treasures. Love, pain, memories, sung with a voice that has been through the fire and come out wiser. The Jackie Avery singers lift the chorus and the horns soften, giving the song a sense of hard-won peace. It is a slow fade, not a grand finale, but it leaves a mark you keep feeling long after the record quits spinning. Today, original Canyon pressings of Total Destruction to Your Mind fetch $20 to $100 on the collector market, prized for their rarity and that wild, trippy cover art. The album's afterlife keeps growing. In 2013, a live natural sound reissued it on purple vinyl, bringing Swamp Dogg's chaos to a new generation of crate diggers and soul heads. On Discogs and Rate Your Music, the ratings hover above 4 stars. Proof that what once sounded too strange for radio now sits at the heart of a devoted community. The record's journey from overlooked oddity to cult classic is written in every needle drop, every online review, and every collector shelf. In a world still wrestling with uncomfortable truths, Swamp Dogg's defiant soul experiments echo louder than any chart position ever could. As streaming revives lost albums, raw voices like his break through sanitized playlists, reminding us that art challenging the status quo never stays buried. The most daring music is not just heard, it is finally felt. Thanks for digging deep with us tonight.